I'm Archdeacon Bill Gray, and I'm the priest of the Anglican parish of Bobcaygeon, Dunsford, and Burnt River. My Easter message is on the theme of isolation. The walls of isolation, I contend, cannot prevent this Easter weekend the reality of resurrection. Thomas Need was the founder of Bobcaygeon. In his early pioneer settler days, he spent much of his time while building shelter and hunting and fishing, living alone, going for long periods of time without seeing another human being. Nevertheless, he found consolation in his reading. He was an avid reader of books, and in his personal devotions, he often privately meditated upon the Bible and read from the Anglican prayer book. My great-grandparents, great-aunts and uncles were homesteaders in southern Saskatchewan. And during those early settler days, they lived a long time in their community without the benefit of a church. Their church was in their homes and in their private devotions and in their private readings, with only their own families and relatives for congregation. My grandmother, throughout her life, often prayed privately in the closet of her bedroom, knelt by her bedside. She continued this practice throughout her life, praying alone, which became especially important as she grew older and was unable to get to church, and yet had the solace in her bedroom of her private prayers. A Belgian priest named Father Damien is famous for his work among a leprosy mission that existed near Molokai in the Hawaiian Islands about the time of the American Civil War and as Canada was becoming a country. For fear of contagion from the leprosy mission, Damien was prevented after a while from associating with others outside the leprosy community, and he had to self-isolate, and he was even prevented from being with his fellow clergy and bishop. On one occasion, Father Damien was desperate to make his own confession, but he was prevented by the Board of Health from visiting with his fellow clergy on a visiting ship to the Hawaiian Islands. Damien, rather, knelt down in a little dinghy rowboat that was kept at a distance from the ship, while his provincial leaned over the rail of the ship, making the sign of the cross for Damien's absolution, while crowds of people, of crew and passengers from the ship, looked on. On this Easter weekend, we are mindful of the fact that women gathered alone or as individuals at the empty tomb without the benefit of the crowds that had welcomed Jesus into Jerusalem but a few days before. The apostles, after the crucifixion and execution of Jesus, they huddled together in that upper room where once they had shared bread and wine, behind locked doors for fear. However, none of these occasions of isolation could keep Jesus out. Jesus visited those apostles in the upper room. He visited Mary alone in the garden, outside the tomb, and appeared to her. He forgave Father Damien alone in his rowboat, and he answered the prayers of my grandmother alone in her bedroom. And his spirit was present of those faithful homesteaders and settlers who gathered together without the benefit of church. I'm speaking to you from my home without the benefit of my congregation. And yet I can assure you that in addition to Ruth, I have you all in my heart, and Jesus has entered this space and this time for us. I shared with you on Good Friday how my father had nurtured a damaged willow back to life, so that it once again grew limbs and branches and twigs and leaves that comprise new life from the 4 barren trunks that it had been reduced to. What I want to share with you now, that after my father died, my family and I gathered in his workshop in the wake following the funeral service, and by chance I happened to open the little door on his wood stove and discovered that he had left for us a gift of kindling in the wood stove that had been taken from the remnants of this willow tree. And in his memory and in his honor, we lit a fire in that wood stove, and in that fire, in the glow of that light, my father was present to us once again. Isolation that we are observing now cannot prevent Easter, nor can it keep Jesus away from us. But he enters among us again, and we accept his gift of new life and the resurrection.